Hi guys, back again. It's coming to the time of season now where we're sort of, if you're a river fisherman anyway, you're starting to sort of look forward to the spring and trying to sort of get all your gear in order. That's certainly what I've been doing through the last couple of weeks through this last lockdown, trying to really get everything sorted for the season ahead, hopefully when we can get out and fish. I've also been getting a lot of questions about what particular rods that I tend to go for on the rivers and why. And to be honest, the single biggest question that I get asked is an absolutely impossible one to answer, which is, what is the perfect rod to fish on the river with? Which is a really, really generic and wide-ranging question. Because obviously when you think about river fishing, you've got different types of river in terms of just the size and the velocity, the size of the fish in them, the techniques that we've got available to us to catch fish in them, everything from ultra lightweight nymphing right the way through to big double articulated streamers and all this kind of stuff. So there is really no one perfect rod for river fishing. That's the honest answer. And that's the reason why there's so many different models of rod. Now, I am spoiled, I'll be honest. I have access to pretty much anything you can imagine equipment-wise just because of my job. And I develop a lot of fishing tackle as well. So, I can sort of, to be perfectly honest, develop rods which are perfect for the way that I like to fish and hopefully for the way a lot of you guys like to fish as well. So I thought about it, and based on the kind of fishing I would normally do in a season, I tried to narrow it down to 3 fly rods that I would not be comfortable fishing without through the course of a year on the river. And I'll sort of talk you through why and what methods I would use with them. Now, try and keep in mind that obviously if you're watching this from the US or New Zealand or somewhere like that where your fish are proportionately a lot bigger, it may be that some of the rods that suit me for my kind of fishing don't necessarily suit the particular fisheries that you're using. Although with modern gear now, even the very, very lightweight stuff is incredibly strong, so you can quite often fish very, very light line size stuff with a lot of confidence. So which 3 rods would I not be happy to fish without? The first one might be a little bit of a surprise because it is a little bit heavy in terms of line size to what a lot of people would maybe associate with the river fishing. And it's the new Hurdy Ultralight. All of these rods are the new ultralights that I've been working on for the last couple of years and are just sort of available in the shops now. And it's the 9-foot 2-inch for a 4-weight. Now, the reason I like this particular model, this for me is really an early season rod. I will use this a lot for fishing dries, particularly on the bigger rivers, so places like the Tweed or maybe the Annan or the Eden, where there is in the early season quite often a requirement to be able to throw a long line and to control it. And quite often you get a lot of wind. I've seen a lot of videos in the past with people, professing to use really, really incredibly lightweight fly rods for the dry fly fishing all year round without any ill effects whatsoever. That is absolute nonsense. You cannot cast very, very, very lightweight stuff in some of the howling wind that you've got to put up with when you get out on them sort of big open reaches of some of the big rivers in the north of England. I've represented England at the World Fly Casting Championship, so I can put a good line out there, and I can't do it with some of that ultra lightweight stuff. So for me, the ability to generate some good line speed with a relatively fast action rod like a 9-foot 2-inch 4-weight, for me lets me get the fly where I need it to be in practical terms on a big wide open river. So for me, that rod, 9-foot 2-inch 4-weight, is my sort of early season big river dry fly rod when I've got to contend with a little bit of wind and all that kind of stuff and throw a longer line. Now, you can also use that rod for some light streamer fishing. I'll often put a 4-weight clear intermediate through this, which is a tricky line to get hold of, to be honest, and fish small streamers with it sometimes. So it's a good versatile all-round rod. If I was doing a lot of out-and-out streamering, I'll be honest, I would revert to a much more specific tool for that, something like a 9.6 for a 6 or even a 9-foot for a 7. If I was overseas, US, places like that, probably an 8-weight. But that for me, good all-round early season, big river dry fly rod. The next one is probably the most versatile tool that I will use all year round. It's a 9'9" for a 3 weight. Now, again, the action on this rod, it's got quite a nice, soft, but still relatively highly recovering tip. Nice moderate action through the blank and still a little bit of beef down in the bottom end. So it's a good all-round progressive action rod, but with a nice, light, in-hand feel and a sharp tip. At 9'9" for a 3, with this I can fish dry dropper, or the duo as we call it, with a relatively long Eurostyle leader, where I'm trying to hold a lot of line off the water, and this is my go-to dry dropper rod. I can fish lightweight dries on it, either with a 2 or a 3 weight line. I will sometimes underline it, particularly if I want to cast a little bit further. At 9'9" for a 3, again, it's light enough so I can fish very, very light tippets, but it's still strong enough to subdue some really big fish. I had some colossal fish last year, both on this rod and on the longer nymphing rod I'm going to talk about in a minute, and it handled them perfectly. No issues whatsoever. The other thing this particular model at 9'9" is also good for is fishing the spiders. Again, where you want to keep quite a bit of line off the water and have good line control when you're mending. At that slightly longer length, it makes a cracking spider fishing rod. So for me, a really good all-round tool. 9'9" for a 3, fishing the duo, lightweight dries, and also the spiders. And obviously, still a perfectly acceptable nymphing tool in those slightly smaller to medium-sized rivers. So really, really good model to carry with you if you're only going to take one rod out on the river. So moving up onto the longer nymphing rods. And I'll be honest, this is the sort of category where I struggle to decide, for myself even, which is the optimum rod length. Over the course of last year, and a little bit the year before, I used this particular model an awful lot. Now this is a 10' 2" for a 2 weight. So it's one of the lighter nymphing rods that we do. Again, it's got that very soft tip. And with this particular rod, I'm really comfortable pitching even down to a 2 or a 2.5mm tungsten bead. It is better with a 2.5mm, particularly when using a level, thin, Spanish-style nymphing leader. It's soft enough to be able to pitch it with some accuracy, and the rod has got enough power down in the bottom end to land even some very, very big fish. I caught some colossal fish over in Tasmania, on both on this rod and the 10' 8" 0 to 2 weight, which is the rod that I always struggle with between these two. Now, the way I would tend to approach it is if I'm fishing sort of medium-sized, small to medium-sized rivers, a 10' 2" 2 weight would be my go-to rod. If I was on a much bigger river where I might have to hold more line off to sort of fish across to a target pocket where I couldn't necessarily wade to as easily, I would go for the longer rod. And for me, I like that 10' 8" length on the 0 to 2 weight line rating, because again, I can fish down to very, very light tippets, but it's still a powerful enough and strong enough rod to land some really, really big fish. Now, a few of the features on these rods, just to give you an insight into why some of them are designed like they are. On all the longer nymphing rods, this butt guide is in quite a low position. All that's there for is when you're fishing the nymph and you're extending the rod out, if that butt guide's a long way up the blank, you can get a very, very big sag of line that hangs down to the handle. And obviously that big sag of line takes you out of contact with your fly, so that's not a good idea. So by having the ring in a low position, it just reduces the amount of line sag that you get when you're fishing with the rod elevated. The blanks are unground as well. They're painted, but they're unground. That helps a little bit with getting the leader adhering to the rod. If you have a matte sanded finish rod, you can get quite a lot of stick off the leader, particularly when you've got very wet sort of conditions or very humid air. You can get the leader sticking to the blank. This finish does help a little bit. It does not solve it. It's practically impossible to solve it, really. You can put some treatments on the blank and stuff like that. You can spray it with stuff which helps short term, but it does tend to wear off quite quickly. On the guides, they're all single foot titaniums just for lightweight, really. And then when you get up to the tip section, it has got a couple of double-footed guides right on the very tip. The reason it's got two double-footed guides on the lighter line size long and nymphing models is because when you're fishing with them very, very thin level leaders, quite often they can foul and tangle around a single leg guide. And when you're casting with it, that leader passes very, very close to the shaft of the blank. So you can get it wrapping around the very, very extreme guides at the tip. So we put a double leg guide on there, which just helps that leader pass by a little bit easier when you're casting. In terms of the reel seats, again on the long and nymphing rods, they're all down locking. Bit of a, two ways of looking at the up locking, down locking thing on reel seats. Up locking reel seats bring automatic reels a little bit closer to hand if you use an automatic style reel. Down locking reel seats help knock the balance a little bit further back, so that you get a slightly better balance with the reel against the longer rod. To be honest, with modern fly rods the way they are now, they're so incredibly light compared to what we had even a few years ago. The balance thing for me is secondary. And I will always tend to try and fish the lightest physical weight combination of rod and reel that I can over having something that's, perfectly balances on your finger. Because at the end of the day, even if it's perfectly balanced, if you're fishing correctly, you're going to have it extended at arm's length. So for me, in that situation, I would rather be holding the lightest possible weight at arm's length rather than something that happens to be perfectly balanced, if that makes sense. Anyway, I hope you're looking forward to the upcoming trout season as much as I am. I'm desperate to get out now. And hopefully I'll see a few of you on the bank at some point during the season. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening and hope it's been of some help for you.